My mom told me, "You'll understand when you're older," after picking a luxury resort trip for my sister instead of me. I said nothing. I simply set my key on the table and was gone before they came back. My name is Katie, I'm 24. And until not long ago I was still living with my mom Marlene, who's 52, and my younger sister Tessa, who's 19. Dad passed away when I was 16, and from that point on it was just the three of us trying to keep things together in our suburban place outside Cleveland, or at least that's what it was supposed to feel like. Let me give you a sense of how life usually ran in the Harper household. Tessa was treated like the shining star from the moment she was born, and Mom always had some excuse ready for her. She's the baby. She's fragile. She needs extra help. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the steady one. The kid who didn't ask for much, who should simply be thankful for whatever scraps of attention or support got tossed my way. When Tessa wanted to quit her part-time job at a neighborhood coffee shop because her manager hurt her feelings, Mom immediately backed her up and bumped up her allowance. But when I asked if I could use a bit of my college fund to study abroad my junior year, suddenly the lecture about money not growing on trees came out, along with a reminder to be sensible. Tessa got a brand new Honda Civic for her 18th birthday. I got a used bicycle for mine and was told to appreciate having a way to get around at all. Her friends could basically turn our place into a sleepover headquarters, blasting music and ordering pizza until 2 in the morning. But when my college friends came by, Mom would start sighing dramatically and suggest they head home before it got too late, usually around 10. What really drove things home for me was what happened after Dad died. He left the house to all of us in equal parts. Mom had the larger share because she was his spouse, but Tessa and I inherited our slices too. We technically owned it together, though Mom handled every financial decision like it was her personal kingdom. She always swore up and down that someday, when she was gone, Tessa and I would split everything evenly because that was the only fair way. "This house belongs to all of us," she'd say. After college I managed to land a marketing assistant job at a mid-sized company downtown, making about 45 grand a year. Not a fortune, but enough to pitch in at home and start saving a little. I even offered to pay rent more than once, but Mom always brushed it off with a warm smile. "This is your home, sweetheart. Family doesn't pay rent." Tessa, however, dropped out of community college after a single semester, claiming school just didn't fit her vibe. She bounced through 8 different jobs in 2 years, usually quitting after a few weeks because of some spat with coworkers or customers, and Mom never once pushed her to contribute. "She's figuring out who she is," Mom would repeat like it was a mantra. Things finally came to a breaking point around February. Tessa had been seeing this guy named Logan for about 6 months, and while he seemed fine enough to me, she acted like he was the most incredible thing to ever walk the earth. She talked about him nonstop, flooded social media with their couple photos, and made him the center of her entire personality. Then one afternoon in early March, she burst into the living room while Mom and I were watching TV, practically shaking with excitement as she waved a small diamond ring in the air. "Logan proposed," she squealed. "We're engaged." My first thought was that they were way too young and had barely known each other long enough to buy matching toothbrushes, let alone commit to forever, but I congratulated her and asked about the plan. That's when things took a turn. "We want a destination wedding," Tessa declared, "something tropical and gorgeous. Logan's been checking out resorts in the Bahamas." Mom immediately started swooning over how dreamy and romantic that sounded. I asked the obvious question: how exactly were they planning to pay for something like that? "Those weddings aren't cheap." Tessa's smile faded for a second. Then she turned those wide puppy dog eyes toward Mom. "Well, we were kinda hoping. I mean, since Dad always said he wished he could walk me down the aisle someday." Mom just melted. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll figure something out. This is your special day." And then for weeks, Tessa went into full-blown planning mode, obsessing over resorts until she landed on a luxury spot in Nassau. The wedding package alone was around 15 grand, not including flights, hotel rooms, or any extras. For our family plus Logan's parents, the whole ordeal would run close to 30,000. I honestly tried to be supportive, but when Tessa started talking about first-class tickets and ocean view suites, I had to push back. "Tessa, maybe look at some places that don't cost as much. There are still beautiful options." She stared at me like I'd suggested she get married in a strip mall parking lot. "Katie, this is my dream wedding. I've been planning this forever." "You've been engaged for 3 weeks," I reminded her. And she snapped back that I was just jealous because no one wanted to marry me. That one hurt, but I stayed quiet. She could be harsh when she didn't get her way. The real blow came later in March when Mom called a family meeting. She said she'd been reviewing numbers and the only realistic path forward for this wedding was some creative financing. With the September 15th date already set, she explained she had an idea about the house. Property values have been climbing, she said gently. If we took out a home equity loan, covering the wedding would be no problem. I just stared. You want to put the house on the line for a wedding? Mom waved off my concern. This isn't just any wedding, Katie. It's Tessa's dream day. And it's not like we'd be wasting the money. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I tried to remind her that losing income or hitting a rough patch could put everything at risk, but she brushed it off, saying her job was stable and I was earning now too, so we could handle the payments. I pointed out how irresponsible it seemed, especially since Tessa and Logan had no savings and barely any job stability, but Mom said I was being bitter and unsupportive. In the end, all I could do was tell her I'd think about it, because honestly it felt like the two of them had already made the decision without me. A few weeks later in April, Mom came to me again, saying she'd visited the bank and gotten pre-approved for a $35,000 home equity loan. The monthly payments would be around $400, which she was sure we could handle together with her paycheck and the portion I already put toward household costs. There's just one little snag, she added. Since you and Tessa are listed as co-owners on the deed, the bank needs signatures from all three of us. My stomach sank. Mom, I don't feel okay with this at all. Katie, please. This is about your sister's happiness. Don't you want Tessa to have the wedding she's dreamed about since she was a kid? I asked for more time, but the pressure never stopped. Tessa kept dropping comments about how I was the one thing standing between her and her perfect day. Mom would sigh loudly whenever wedding plans were mentioned, always noting how disappointed Tessa was because we couldn't move forward. Eventually, in early May, I gave in. I signed the loan papers, and Mom immediately started funneling money into every possible wedding cost. The September 15th date was set, just 4 short months away. And almost instantly, things spun out of control. Tessa suddenly needed a whole new wardrobe for the trip. She booked spa packages and special excursions that weren't in the original plan. She insisted on hosting the rehearsal dinner at the resort's priciest restaurant. When I mentioned how fast the expenses were climbing, Mom brushed it off. Don't worry, sweetheart. We'll figure it out. This is Tessa's moment. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Tessa casually announced she'd invited 6 extra friends to come along. The more the merrier, she said, like it was nothing. I did the math. With the bonus guests, the room upgrades, and all the extras she kept piling on, the total was approaching $50,000. Our $35,000 loan didn't even come close anymore. How exactly are we paying the rest? I asked Mom. I've been thinking about that, she replied. I could take cash advances on my credit cards, maybe $8,000 or so. My stomach flipped. Mom, that's ridiculous. Cash advances carry interest rates around 25%. We'll never dig ourselves out of that. Katie, sometimes you take risks for the people you love. Tessa deserves this day. I tried one last time to be reasonable. I suggested trimming some extras, maybe cutting the guest list or finding cheaper alternatives without ruining her vision. Both Mom and Tessa reacted as if I'd tried to sabotage the wedding out of jealousy. You'll understand when you're older, Mom said with that dismissive tone. You're worried about money now, but family is what matters. Someday you'll want people to sacrifice for your happiness too. That line echoed in my head for days. You'll understand when you're older. I was 24, college-educated, working full-time, and helping support the household, yet somehow too immature to grasp why we should bury ourselves in debt for a single event. The final breaking point came a week before the wedding. I walked in after work to find Tessa and Mom surrounded by piles of shopping bags. Tessa was twirling around in a designer dress she'd bought for the rehearsal dinner. It was $800, but it's Valentino, she said, glowing. I'll probably never own anything this nice again. I snapped. Tessa, we're already 15 grand over budget. Why are you spending money we don't have? Oh my God, Katie, you are obsessed with money. It's just a dress. It's an $800 dress paid for with credit card debt. And she instantly cut me off. This is my wedding. If you can't be supportive, maybe don't bother showing up. I turned to Mom, hoping she'd step in, but instead she sighed and said, Katie, I know finances stress you out, But can't you just be happy for your sister? This is the biggest day of her life. That night sleep wouldn't come. I kept replaying Mom's tone, that patronizing line about understanding when I was older. Dad never talked to me like that. He always treated me like my opinion mattered. He'd never have put our home at risk for a wedding, and he definitely wouldn't have brushed off my concerns like I was a child. And then I thought about the house. Dad left it to all three of us equally. Mom always claimed it would be our inheritance, our safety net. Now she was ready to gamble it away for a party. That's when I made up my mind. The next morning, I called in sick and spent hours researching property law and real estate attorneys. What I learned was eye-opening. Since Tessa and I were co-owners alongside Mom, any one of us had the right to request a partition sale. If co-owners couldn't agree on how to handle the property, the court could force a sale and divide the proceeds by ownership shares. It was the nuclear option, and it would almost certainly blow up whatever relationship I had left with them. But I was staring at years of debt for choices I never wanted any part of. Also, Tessa could play princess. I spent the weekend consulting lawyers. The process would take months, but it was completely doable. The house was worth around $320,000 based on recent sales. There was $180,000 left on the original mortgage, plus the new $35,000 loan. After paying those off and covering legal fees, we'd probably end up with about $95,000 to split. My portion would be roughly $30,000. Not life-changing money, but enough to get my own place and finally breathe. Still, I wasn't ready to push the button quite yet. I decided I needed one final conversation with Mom. Monday evening, I asked Mom to sit down with me alone, and I laid out everything weighing on me. The debt piling up, the danger to our home, and the constant pattern of reckless spending wrapped up in this wedding. Mom, I love Tessa, and of course I want her to have a joyful wedding, but we're putting our entire future on the line for one day. What happens if you lose your job? What if the house suddenly needs major repairs? We'll have no equity left and be drowning in $50,000 of high-interest debt. Mom listened, but the look in her eyes told me her mind was already made up. Katie, I know you're anxious, but sometimes you take leaps of faith for the people you love. Tessa has struggled to find her footing, and this wedding is a fresh start for her. I'm not letting money fears take this away. And what about my future? What about my security? You're young, smart, capable. You'll figure your life out. Tessa needs more support right now. There it was again, the same old pattern that ruled our house since Dad died. Everything for Tessa. My concerns were always something to brush aside. What if I wanted to sell the house? I asked quietly. Mom's face drained of color. What are you talking about? What if I said I didn't want to participate anymore? What if I wanted to cash out my share and start over somewhere else? Katie, you can't be serious. This is our family home. Your father wanted us to stay together. Dad wanted us to protect each other, not sink ourselves in debt over one event. We argued for another hour, but it was obvious she wouldn't budge. Tessa's wedding was happening, no matter the price, and I was expected to fall in line because family apparently demanded absolute sacrifice. That night, I called the lawyer I'd spoken to earlier and told him I wanted to move forward with the partition action. He explained that the other owners had to be formally served. Leaving papers on the counter wouldn't count. The next morning, Tuesday, August 5th, 6 weeks to the day before Tessa's wedding, I filed the paperwork to force the sale of the house. I scheduled a process server to deliver the documents to Mom and Tessa on Monday, August 12th, giving them a full month before the wedding to absorb what was happening. I didn't tell them right away. They were leaving for the Bahamas on September 12th, and I needed space to figure out my next move before things blew up. Wednesday night, September 11th, I packed 2 suitcases with the things that mattered most and loaded them into my car. I signed a short-term rental across town and put down a deposit. I arranged to take a week off work starting immediately. Thursday morning, I waited until Mom and Tessa headed out for the airport. Tessa was practically vibrating with excitement, going on and on about how flawless everything would be. Mom looked frazzled by last-minute details but clearly thrilled that Tessa was so happy. They barely acknowledged my goodbye, assuming I'd stay behind to look after the house and show up once they returned on Monday. After their Uber pulled away, I walked back inside one final time. I wandered through every room, thinking about Dad helping me learn to ride a bike in the driveway, guiding me through homework at the kitchen table, reading stories to me at night. I knew I'd missed the place, but it hadn't felt like my home in a long time. I left a sealed envelope on the kitchen table with Mom's name on it. Inside were copies of the partition lawsuit and a short note. Mom, I tried to talk to you, but you made it clear Tessa's wishes mattered more than our financial well-being. Since you're set on risking the house for her wedding, I've decided to take my share now instead of waiting for foreclosure. You should have already received the official papers last month. My lawyer's info is included. I'll be elsewhere while this is sorted out. I hope Tessa's wedding is everything she dreamed of. Katie. I set my house key beside the envelope, walked out, and drove to my new apartment. I waited. They came home Monday night, September 16th, around 8:30. I was watching Netflix when my phone lit up nonstop. The first call from Tessa at 8:47 p.m. went to voicemail, mostly screaming and crying about how I was a jealous, hateful person who ruined her best week ever. Mom called at 9:15 p.m. Her message quieter but somehow more painful. She said she was devastated and couldn't fathom how I could be so selfish. She demanded I call back immediately to explain myself. Over the next 3 hours, I got 47 calls, 32 texts, and more voicemails than I could count. They cycled through fury, guilt trips, and emotional manipulation. From Tessa. I can't believe you did this to me during the happiest time of my life. Mom is crying because of you. From Mom. Your father would be ashamed. How could you attack your own family like this? From Tessa again. Logan's parents think we're trash because of your stupid lawsuit. You humiliated me. From Mom. If you think you can blackmail us, you're wrong. We'll fight this. I didn't answer any of it. Talking had gotten me nowhere for months. Tuesday morning, my lawyer Tom Rodriguez called. Mom had left several heated messages at his office. She seems to think you can just stop the lawsuit whenever you feel like it, he said. I explained to Tom that once the paperwork was filed, it didn't just disappear because Mom wanted it to. But she clearly wasn't grasping that. How long is this whole thing going to take? I asked him. Probably 4 to 6 months if they don't fight it, he said, and longer if they decide to drag their feet. What are the odds they actually contest it? Honestly, pretty low. Partition laws are straightforward, and there's not much for them to argue. Fighting would only rack up legal fees they don't seem able to pay. That afternoon, Tessa showed up at my office. Security called to say there was someone crying and causing a scene in the lobby. When I went down, there she was, sobbing dramatically in front of reception. Katie, please, she begged when she saw me. You have to stop this. Mom hasn't slept in days. She's talking about taking out more loans just to fight the lawsuit. I let her outside so we could talk without an audience. Tess, I tried talking to you and Mom for months. Neither of you listened. But I just got married, she cried. This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and now everything is ruined. How was your wedding? I asked. It threw her off. It was beautiful. Perfect, really. The resort was incredible and the whole ceremony felt like a dream. I said I was glad and I meant it. I did want her to have a special wedding. Then why are you doing this? She demanded. I told her again about the debt, the risk to the house, and the years of favoritism that led us here. She listened, but I could tell my words weren't landing. I don't get why you're so hung up on money, she finally said. It's just money. We're family. That's when I realized she and I lived in completely different worlds. For Tessa, money appeared whenever she needed it, and someone else always shouldered the fallout. For me, money meant stability, freedom, and the chance to build a life that wasn't dependent on someone else's choices. I'm not obsessed with money, I told her. I just don't want to spend the next decade paying off the bill for your party. It wasn't a party, it was my wedding. A wedding is one day, I said. The debt lasts a whole lot longer. She walked away without saying goodbye. The following weeks were rough. Mom and Tessa kept trying different angles, hoping I'd get worn down. Mom offered to refinance the house and remove my name from the loans if I just dropped the case. Tessa wrote a long message about forgiveness and family love. When that didn't work, they tried rallying other people to their side. Mom called my aunts and uncles claiming I was ripping the family apart over a pile of cash. Tessa posted vague, dramatic messages online about betrayal. A few relatives reached out, mostly confused, but once I explained everything, most of them supported my decision. My Uncle Mike, Dad's brother, met me for coffee and told me Dad used to worry about Mom's spending habits. He always said Marlene was too generous for her own good. Especially with Tessa. That was something I'd never heard before, but it suddenly made a lot of sense. The partition case moved forward steadily. Mom and Tessa hired a lawyer, but just like Tom predicted, there wasn't much to challenge. The court ordered an appraisal and scheduled a hearing to authorize the sale. Meanwhile, I kept running into fallout I hadn't prepared for. Word spread around the neighborhood, and every time I went back to pick up more things, someone had something to say. One afternoon, Mrs. Patterson from next door caught me loading boxes into my trunk. "Katie, sweetheart, I heard about the house," she whispered like she was sharing state secrets. "I just want you to know your father would be proud you stood up for yourself." That hit harder than I expected. I'd been doubting myself nonstop, wondering if Dad would think I'd gone too far by forcing a sale. But Mrs. Patterson had watched our family dynamic for 15 years. She saw the same things I saw. "Your mom means well," she said, "but that girl has been spoiled rotten since your daddy passed." Someone had to stop the free ride eventually. At work, I poured myself into my projects. Having my own place and feeling like I was building something for myself gave me energy I hadn't felt in years. My boss, Margaret, even commented during our monthly check-in. "Whatever you changed in your life, keep doing it," she said. "Your work has been outstanding lately. I'm thinking of promoting you to Senior Marketing Coordinator." The promotion came with an $8,000 raise, and it felt like the universe saying, "See? You made the right choice." While my own life was leveling up, the situation at Mom's house was getting messier. My cousin Maria called in early August to share what she'd heard from her mom, who'd heard it from mine. Apparently Tessa had been having panic attacks over the lawsuit. She was convinced everyone in town knew about their money problems and was too embarrassed to go out. I almost felt bad for her, until Maria added that Tessa was still posting nonstop about her perfect wedding and showing off all her pricey honeymoon purchases. Like, maybe don't flaunt your designer bags online if you're trying to get sympathy for being broke, Maria said. That was Tessa to a T. She wanted to play both sides at once, painting herself as the wounded victim of my heartless lawsuit, while also flaunting the glamorous newlywed lifestyle she thought she deserved. But the real turning point came when I bumped into Logan's mom, Patricia, at the grocery store in mid-August. I'd only met her a handful of times before the wedding, yet she recognized me immediately and approached with this careful, concerned expression. "Katie, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is everything okay with your family? Logan mentioned there were some legal issues with your house." I gave her a brief, polite version of events, focusing on the financial disagreement, rather than unloading all the emotional baggage. As I talked, her expression shifted from confused to troubled. "Oh my," she murmured. "Logan didn't tell us the whole story. We thought it was just a small dispute about wedding costs. What exactly did Tessa say?" Patricia hesitated. "Well, she claimed you were jealous about not being the center of attention, and that you were intentionally causing stress in their marriage. She made it sound like you were overreacting in some petty vindictive way." Of course she did. I wasn't shocked, but hearing it from someone outside the family still stung. The truth is, I told Patricia I was terrified about the debt they were taking on. I tried suggesting alternatives but was told I was too young to understand what family priorities really meant. Protecting myself financially felt like my only choice. Patricia nodded, absorbing every word. "Between us," she said quietly, "Logan has been really stressed since they got back from the honeymoon. Tessa keeps talking about buying a house, starting a family, upgrading their car. And they can barely afford rent with the wedding bills hanging over them." After that conversation, I felt more solid than ever about my decision. It wasn't just about saving myself. Enabling Tessa's spending was hurting everyone around her, including her brand new husband. The court-ordered appraisal happened in late October. The appraiser spent a couple of hours measuring rooms and snapping pictures. I wasn't present, but Mom called afterward and told me the preliminary value was $315,000. Right around what I'd estimated earlier. "The lawyer thinks the house will probably sell in December or January," she said flatly. "Amber keeps asking if there's anything we can do to stop it, but he says there isn't." "How's she handling everything?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Not great. She's anxious all the time. Keeps saying this isn't how she imagined her first year of marriage." I bit my tongue instead of pointing out that things might have looked very different if she hadn't demanded a wedding with the price tag of a luxury car. Around then, pressure started coming from unexpected places. My dad's sister, Aunt Carol, called one evening sounding torn between concern and judgment. "Katie, I know you feel hurt by your mother's choices," she began, "but don't you think this is a bit extreme? Your father loved that house. It's where you grew up. Forcing your mother and sister out feels so permanent." I explained everything again, but she kept pushing. "Couldn't you work out a payment plan? Maybe Tessa could pay you back eventually?" "With what income?" I asked. "She doesn't have steady work and just buried herself in wedding debt." "Well, once she starts working full-time, or once she and Logan settle down." The conversation kept spinning until I finally understood what really bothered her. "Are you worried about how this looks to everyone else?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Well, yes. People are talking, Katie. They think you're being spiteful and greedy. It reflects on the whole family." And there it was. The family's image mattered more than my financial stability or emotional well-being. "I'm sorry it embarrasses you," I said, "but I'm not sacrificing my future so everyone else can pretend everything's fine." That conversation made it crystal clear how many people expected me to just swallow the consequences of everyone else's choices for the sake of peace. But not everyone felt that way. My Uncle Mike called me a few days later. "I heard Carol gave you a hard time," he said. "I want you to know I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Uncle Mike. That means a lot. Your dad always worried your mom would spoil Tessa so much it'd hurt her long term. He used to say she needed to learn how to handle disappointment or she'd never manage adulthood." It was the second time someone mentioned Dad's concerns about Tessa's upbringing, and it made me wish he were still here. Maybe he would have headed off this chaos before it reached me. By early September, the stress was taking a visible toll on everyone. Maria told me Mom was calling in sick more often, and that Tessa spent most days in pajamas, scrolling through online forums about family lawsuits. The irony was brutal. If Tessa had put even half that energy into finding stable work, she probably could have started paying down some of her debt. Then in November, 3 months after I filed, Mom called me from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let the call go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Katie?" Mom's voice sounded small, worn down. "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop downtown, and she looked exhausted. Thinner than before, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks. "The lawyer says we can't stop the sale," she said immediately. "I know. With the value around $315,000, and after paying off the mortgages and fees, we're looking at about 90 grand to divide. I'd get around 30,000, exactly what I'd calculated months earlier. That's not enough for us to buy another house in this area," she said quietly. "Not with Tessa's student loans and the wedding debt. We'll have to move somewhere cheaper. Probably rent for a while." A pang of guilt hit me, but I pushed it back. "I'm sorry it came to this." "Are you really sorry, Katie?" The question just hung there. Was I? I was sorry the family fell apart. I was sorry Dad wasn't here to help us handle things. I was sorry Mom and Tessa were hurting. But was I sorry for protecting myself? For refusing to let them mortgage my future so Tessa could have her fantasy wedding? No, I wasn't sorry for that. "I'm sorry we couldn't find a better solution," I told her. Mom nodded slowly. "I know you think I always favored Tessa. Maybe I did. She just needed more support. You were always so capable. So independent." "I could have managed," I said softly, "but that didn't mean I should lose my financial stability because of her choices." "You're right." The admission looked like it physically hurt her. I got caught up wanting her to have the perfect wedding. I didn't think about what came after. We talked for another hour. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. She admitted the wedding had spiraled beyond anything she could handle, and that she'd been too embarrassed to admit she was in trouble. "What about Tessa?" I asked. Mom winced. "She can't accept any blame. She still thinks you did all of this to punish her. And you? Do you think I did it to hurt you?" Mom paused, choosing her words. "I think you did it to protect yourself. I don't like how you did it, but I understand why." The house sold that January for $318,000. After everything was paid off, my check came out to $31,200. I used it as a down payment on a small condo near downtown, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that was truly mine. Mom and Tessa ended up in a rental about half an hour outside the city. The cheaper cost of living helped, but Mom still had to work a second part-time job. Tessa finally got serious about finding steady work. I haven't spoken to Tessa since the day she showed up at my office. She blocked me everywhere, won't talk to me at family gatherings, and pretends I don't exist. From what relatives say, she and Logan are managing, but the wedding debt has weighed heavily on their marriage. Mom and I, though, have slowly begun rebuilding things. We meet for lunch once a month or so. It's not how it used to be, but it's more honest than it ever was. She's admitted she enabled Tessa for years, and that the wedding debacle was the boiling point of years of bad financial habits. A few weeks ago, Tessa had a baby. Mom sent photos and I felt a swirl of emotions. I'm an aunt now, but I haven't met my nephew, and I doubt I will anytime soon. Sometimes I question myself, whether there was a gentler path, whether I could have kept the peace without pulling the nuclear option. Maybe I could have rolled over and accepted the debt for the sake of keeping the family intact. But then I look at my life now. I own my home. I'm debt-free except for my mortgage. I'm finally building a future based on my choices, not obligations. My relationship with Mom is built on mutual respect instead of guilt trips and expectations. Tessa got her dream wedding, but it cost her stability and family trust. Mom learned some painful lessons about enabling someone into helplessness, and I learned that protecting yourself sometimes means choosing a path others will never understand or forgive. Would I make the same choice again? Honestly, yes. I tried every peaceful approach first. I tried reasoning, compromise, alternatives. Every time they dismissed me and talked down to me like I was too young to understand my own life. When Mom told me, "You'll understand when you're older," what she really meant was that my opinions didn't count, that I was expected to sacrifice without question. Turns out I understood just fine. I understood I was being asked to surrender my security for someone else's wants.